The night sky over Earth was calm, clear, and familiar. Billions of people were asleep. Others worked late shifts, watched screens, or stared out of windows, unaware that history was about to break open above them. Without warning, the stars began to disappear. At first it looked like clouds moving too fast. Then the clouds bent into sharp lines. Massive shadows slid across the sky, blocking constellations that had guided humanity for thousands of years. Every telescope, satellite, and sensor on Earth screamed at once. Objects were entering orbit. Not one, not 10, hundreds. Across the planet, alarms activated. Military bases locked down. Power grids shifted into emergency mode. Deep underground, doors that had never been opened in public slid apart in silence. The Galactic Empire had arrived. Above Earth, ships the size of cities formed a perfect ring. Their hulls were dark, smooth, and untouched by age. Energy rippled across them like a living skin. No engines flared. No weapons fired. They simply waited, confident and patient. A single signal pushed through every frequency known to humanity. Screens turned black, then filled with alien symbols that resolved into simple translated words. Earth is claimed. Do not resist. Compliance ensures survival. In Imperial command chambers far above the planet, alien officers observed calmly. Their species had conquered hundreds of worlds. The pattern was always the same. Fear. Confusion. Collapse. Earth would be no different. They were wrong. Deep beneath mountains and oceans, human command centers came fully awake. Generals, engineers, analysts, and civilians moved without panic. No shouting. No wasted motion. Each person already knew their role. Earth had seen this future coming. Decades earlier, strange signals had been detected at the edge of the solar system. They were weak, easy to miss, and ignored by most. Humanity did not ignore them. Humanity prepared. Now that preparation unfolded. Imperial ships began disabling Earth satellites. One by one, lights vanished from their displays. They expected chaos on the surface. Instead, something strange happened. Human communications did not fail. Old systems activated. Fiber lines. Ground-based networks. Shielded relays buried deep in the crust. Technologies the Empire considered outdated suddenly came alive, invisible to alien scans. An Imperial sensor officer tilted his head, confused. Earth was supposed to be blind now. It was not. On the surface, people felt the change. Planes landed early. Trains slowed. Cities dimmed, not into darkness, but into controlled silence. Emergency broadcasts did not shout. They spoke calmly, telling people to stay inside, to trust the process. Some cried. Some prayed. Many watched the sky through windows, seeing shapes that should not exist. Above the Atlantic Ocean, an Imperial cruiser drifted slightly out of formation. Then its lights went out. No explosion. No warning. 1 second it was there, proud and powerful. The next, it was dead metal, falling slowly toward the planet it came to conquer. Imperial commanders froze. No weapons had fired. No energy spike was detected. Another ship lost power. Then another. Human cyber units worked in quiet rooms, eyes fixed on streams of data. They were not attacking the ships themselves. They were attacking the rules the ships depended on. Physics assumptions. Network shortcuts. Old Empire code reused for centuries because no one had ever challenged it. Humanity challenged everything. In orbit, Imperial formations broke as ships drifted out of alignment. Collision warnings echoed through alien halls. Officers shouted, now, their calm breaking. What is happening? Demanded an Imperial admiral. No one answered with confidence. On Earth, a human commander stood watching a simple display. He did not smile. This was not victory yet. This was proof. Proof that humanity had guessed right. The Empire escalated. Energy weapons powered up, targeting military bases, population centers, symbols of control. The Empire believed fear would force surrender. The weapons never fired. Human countermeasures wrapped around the targeting systems like invisible hands. Commands were delayed. Loops formed. Safety locks engaged where none had existed before. To the Empire, it felt like the universe itself had turned against them. Finally, humanity spoke. A signal left Earth, clean and focused. It was sent not through Imperial networks but through open space using raw physics. Every ship received it at the same time. This planet is defended. You were detected long ago. Your attack has failed. Imperial officers stared at the message in disbelief. A pre-industrial species was not supposed to sound like this. Come. Certain. Unafraid. The message continued. Withdraw now. No further action will be taken. Silence followed. In the Imperial flagship, the Admiral felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. This was not how conquest began. This was not how prey behaved. He ordered a full scan of Earth. The results were worse than expected. Hidden launch systems, mobile defenses, energy reserves carefully masked. Humanity had turned their entire planet into a fortress without announcing it to the stars. Earth was not loud. It was ready. As another Imperial ship lost power and drifted helplessly, the Admiral understood the truth too late. Humanity's response was not fast because they were desperate. It was fast because they had been waiting. And the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The Imperial fleet did not retreat. Pride would not allow it. Orders flowed through alien command decks demanding answers, demanding control, demanding results. The Empire had never faced resistance like this, and its leaders refused to believe that a single planet could truly challenge them. Above Earth, damaged ships were pushed aside as fresh vessels moved forward. Power surged through Imperial systems. This time the Empire did not rely on intimidation. It chose force. Energy cannons charged across the fleet. On Earth, no one celebrated. Human command centers remained quiet and focused. The first exchange had gone as predicted, but it had also revealed something important. The Empire was stubborn. That made it dangerous. In a buried facility beneath the Arctic ice, analysts watched alien energy patterns shift. The Empire was switching modes, abandoning standard invasion doctrine. It was adapting. Human commanders nodded. This was expected too. Imperial weapons finally fired. Beams of alien energy cut through space, striking Earth's upper atmosphere. The sky burned white. Shockwaves rolled across the planet. Oceans heaved. Cities shook. Millions screamed as the heavens seemed to fall. But the beams did not reach the ground. Layers of invisible fields absorbed the strikes, bending the energy, spreading it thin. The shields were not perfect. Some damage slipped through. Power grids failed. Buildings cracked. Fires bloomed in distant cities. Human emergency systems reacted instantly. Drones filled the skies, guiding people to safety. Medical units moved before panic could spread. The world did not break. In orbit, Imperial commanders watched in disbelief as their strongest weapons failed to deliver decisive damage. "How is this possible?" one officer hissed. The answer was simple. Humanity did not build one shield. They built many. Each layer used different principles. Some were physical. Some were electromagnetic. Others relied on mathematical distortions the Empire had never bothered to study. No single weapon could defeat them all at once. The Empire changed tactics again. Small strike craft launched in swarms, racing toward Earth's surface. They were fast, agile, and armed for precision strikes. Their mission was simple. Break through. Destroy command centers. Kill leadership. Human radar tracked every one of them. Old defense systems came online. Missile silos long thought abandoned opened their doors. Rail cannons hidden in mountains rotated silently. Weapons fired that used speed instead of energy, mass instead of heat. The sky became a battlefield. Imperial fighters exploded in flashes of light. Some made it through, diving toward targets with suicidal focus. They were met by something the Empire did not expect. Human pilots. Small, rough-looking craft launched from hidden bases and even civilian-looking structures. They were not elegant. They were not advanced by Imperial standards. But they were fast, unpredictable, and flown by humans who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Dogfights erupted above continents and oceans. Human pilots did not fly by strict patterns. They broke rules, pushed limits, took risks the Empire considered insane. It worked. Imperial losses mounted. Command channels filled with frantic reports. The invasion timetable shattered completely. Deep in Imperial command space, a new concern emerged. Their own systems were still under attack. Not violently but persistently. Human cyber units were not just disabling ships. They were learning. Every failed Imperial command revealed another weakness. Every blocked signal taught humanity more about how the Empire thought. The Empire had grown lazy after centuries of dominance. Humanity had not. An Imperial data officer finally spoke the thought many feared. They are improving faster than we are. The Admiral ordered a planetary kill option prepared. It was an extreme measure rarely used. A weapon designed to fracture a planet's core and end resistance forever. As the weapon charged, massive and terrible, human sensors detected it immediately. For the first time since the invasion began, human command rooms felt tension spike. This weapon could not be blocked by shields alone. It would change everything. Human leaders gathered virtually, faces calm but serious. There was no debate. This outcome had also been considered. Authorization codes passed through secure channels older than the invasion itself. Permission granted. Across the solar system, objects that had been silent for decades began to move. Asteroids shifted course. Satellites changed alignment. Structures hidden near the moon activated, revealing themselves for the first time. Imperial sensors struggled to keep up. Their displays filled with new contacts, all human, all moving with purpose. "What are those?" an officer asked, fear creeping into his voice. The admiral did not answer. He was staring at a different screen. The planetary kill weapon lost synchronization. Its systems began to drift, commands arriving out of order. Safety locks engaged without instruction. The weapon's core shut down moments before firing. Humanity had not attacked it directly. They had denied its certainty. The Empire relied on perfect coordination to use such weapons. Humanity introduced doubt into every process. Tiny delays. Small errors. Enough to make catastrophic failure inevitable. The Imperial fleet was no longer in control of the battle. Humanity sent another message. "We warned you. Stand down." This time, the message was intercepted by more than the fleet. Nearby systems picked it up. Neutral observers. Traders. Listening posts. Word began to spread quietly through the galaxy. Earth was fighting back. In the Imperial flagship, the Admiral finally understood the truth. This was not a rebellion. This was not a lucky defense. This was a species that had studied war, expected it, and prepared to survive it at any cost. The order to retreat hovered on his tongue. But the Empire was not ready to admit fear. And humanity was just getting started. The first Imperial retreat order never reached the fleet. It vanished inside the Empire's own command web, delayed by milliseconds, then lost entirely. Human interference did not block messages outright. That would have been obvious. Instead, it made every decision arrive too late. Above Earth, confusion spread through the alien armada. Some captains pushed forward, believing victory was still possible. Others hesitated, waiting for confirmation that never came. The perfect Imperial formation fractured into uneven lines, ships drifting apart like a broken shield wall. Human commanders noticed immediately. They did not rush to destroy the scattered fleet. They let the disorder grow. Across Earth, civilians watched the sky with fear and awe. News feeds showed burning wreckage falling harmlessly into oceans. Emergency crews worked non-stop, calm voices guiding millions through the crisis. Humanity was afraid, but it was united. No one asked why this was happening. The question now was how far it would go. Far above the planet, the Imperial Admiral demanded a full strategic overview. The results chilled him. Human forces were no longer reacting. They were predicting. Each Imperial maneuver met a counter before it was complete. Supply ships vanished from sensors. Communication relays failed in patterns too precise to be random. The Empire's greatest strength, coordination, was being turned into its greatest weakness. Worse, other eyes were now watching. In nearby systems, independent traders detected massive fleet movements around Earth. Long-range observers picked up fragments of the human signals leaking into open space. Neutral powers began recording everything. The story spread quietly at first. Earth was not surrendering. Earth was winning. Within hours, alien councils across the galaxy called emergency sessions. Images of the battle were replayed again and again. Primitive species were not supposed to fight like this. They were not supposed to think like this. Humanity was breaking assumptions older than empires. The Galactic Empire noticed the attention. Imperial leadership understood something dangerous was happening. Even if they crushed Earth now, the damage was done. The illusion of Imperial invincibility was cracking. That could not be allowed. A new order came down from the highest authority. No retreat. No restraint. Total domination. Imperial commanders unlocked weapons that had not been used in centuries. Reality warping fields. Gravity inversion cannons. Experimental drives that bent space itself. The Empire would remind the galaxy why it ruled. The first gravity strike fired near Earth's moon. Space twisted. Light bent. For a moment, it looked like the moon itself was tearing apart. Human sensors screamed warnings. Tides surged across Earth. Seismic waves rippled through continents. The weapon was not aimed at the planet, but it sent a clear message. We can end you. In human command rooms, tension spiked again. This was beyond the initial invasion models. The Empire was gambling now, willing to damage the system just to win. Human leaders did not panic. They had built their plans around a simple truth. Any empire willing to rule the galaxy must fear losing control more than losing ships. Humanity decided to test that fear. Deep space arrays activated far from Earth. They did not fire weapons. They broadcast information. Raw, unfiltered combat data. Imperial losses. Command failures. Tactical breakdowns. The signal was aimed not at enemies but at observers. Within minutes, neutral systems received proof of the Empire's struggle. Footage showed Imperial ships drifting powerless, crews helpless against invisible attacks. The myth of effortless conquest shattered in real time. The Empire tried to block the broadcast. They failed. Human transmissions used simple methods, bouncing signals through natural stellar phenomena. Old tricks, refined to perfection. Cutting them off would require shutting down entire star regions. The galaxy began to react. Several neutral fleets repositioned, not toward Earth, but toward Imperial borders. Defensive formations activated. Trade routes rerouted. Trust in the Empire weakened with every passing minute. The Imperial Admiral realized the battle was no longer just military. It was political. He ordered a direct strike at one of Earth's revealed installations, hoping for a visible victory. A cluster of ships powered weapons and fired at a mountain range housing a known human defense node. The mountain vanished in a cloud of fire and stone. For a moment, silence followed. Imperial officers felt relief. Finally, damage they could see. Then human systems adapted. Backup nodes came online instantly. Power rerouted. Command authority shifted without delay. The destroyed base had already passed control elsewhere before the strike landed. Humanity had designed its leadership to survive decapitation. The Empire had designed its leadership to command. That difference was becoming fatal. Human fleets, previously unseen, began to emerge from deep space positions around the solar system. Not massive battleships but compact strike groups, moving fast and coordinated. They did not attack the main fleet. They attacked logistics. Fuel depots exploded. Repair ships vanished. Ammunition carriers were disabled and captured. Imperial warships found themselves armed but starving. Imperial captains sent desperate requests for resupply. None came. On Earth, a human officer watched the unfolding collapse and spoke quietly to his team. They still think this is about Earth. He was right. Humanity was not defending a planet anymore. It was dismantling an invasion. As Imperial morale faltered, a new message appeared on alien displays. It was not from Earth's military command. It was from humanity itself, broadcast openly. We do not seek your destruction. But we will not kneel. Leave our system. The galaxy listened. The Empire hesitated. In that hesitation, humanity gained something more powerful than territory. Time. And time, in war, was the one weapon the Empire could no longer afford to give them. The Galactic Empire finally understood that Earth was not the center of the problem. The problem was humanity. Imperial fleets around the solar system were still powerful, still armed, but they were no longer confident. Ships waited for orders that came late or not at all. Officers argued over priorities. Every system check revealed more uncertainty. The Empire had built its strength on perfect control, and that control was slipping through its fingers. High Command issued a new directive. If Earth could not be crushed quickly, it would be isolated. Imperial jump gates across nearby systems flared to life. Massive interdiction fields activated, designed to trap all traffic in and out of the solar system. The Empire planned to cut Earth off from the galaxy, starve it of information, and erase it quietly over time. Human sensors detected the change within seconds. Earth was being placed inside a cage. In human command centers, the mood shifted. Not to fear but to resolve. Isolation had always been part of the models. Humanity had never assumed it would be allowed to fight on equal terms. They had prepared to fight alone. Imperial engineers worked quickly, locking down space routes. Neutral observers were pushed back by force. Trade vessels were turned away or destroyed as warnings. The Empire wanted no witnesses now. But it was too late for that. The galaxy already knew something was wrong. Inside the solar system, Imperial ships reorganized. A thick defensive line formed between Earth and the outer system. Behind it, the Empire began assembling something new. Something heavy. A siege fleet. These ships were slow, massive, and built for one purpose only: planetary reduction. They were not meant to fight fleets. They were meant to end worlds. As the siege ships powered up, human analysts watched their energy curves rise. The projected damage was clear. If the Empire brought those weapons to full strength, Earth's shields would not hold forever. Human leaders gathered again. There was no argument. The next step was dangerous but necessary. Authorization passed through channels buried deeper than any before. Systems long considered theoretical were approved for live use. Across the solar system, space changed. Human gravity manipulators activated in precise patterns. Not strong enough to tear ships apart, but subtle enough to bend trajectories. Imperial vessels found their orbits drifting, their formations stretching. Small corrections turned into constant adjustments. The Empire felt the pressure immediately. Holding the siege line required perfect balance. Humanity made that balance impossible. Imperial commanders ordered their ships to compensate, burning fuel at an alarming rate just to stay in position. Reserves dropped faster than expected. Maintenance crews worked non-stop as systems strained under conditions they were never designed to face. Human strike groups moved again. This time they did not hide. Compact fleets emerged from shadowed regions of space, transmitting openly. They did not fire immediately. They approached the Imperial line slowly, deliberately, daring a response. Imperial gunners locked on. Human ships did something unexpected. They stopped. The silence stretched. Then human vessels opened their hulls and released hundreds of small objects. Not weapons. Not drones. Simple metal frames that unfolded into massive reflective structures. Solar light hit them. Energy flooded through the arrays, focused and redirected with terrifying efficiency. The reflected beams slammed into Imperial shield systems from dozens of angles at once. The Empire's defenses overloaded. Several siege ships lost shielding entirely. Alarms blared as hulls began to heat and crack. Imperial commanders shouted orders to fire back. Human ships were already moving. They did not chase kills. They struck weak points, vanished, then struck again elsewhere. The siege formation twisted under the pressure, its power uneven, its timing ruined. Inside the Imperial flagship, the Admiral watched the data collapse into chaos. Every attempt to stabilize the situation only revealed more flaws. Human tactics were not built around victory in a single battle. They were built around erosion. Wear the enemy down. Break their rhythm. Make every success cost too much. The Admiral made a choice. He authorized the deployment of Imperial ground forces. Drop ships launched toward Earth, aimed at major population centers and known installations. The Empire would force humanity to fight where it hurt most. On Earth, warning sirens wailed as alien forces burned through the atmosphere. Skies lit with fire. The invasion had reached the ground. Human ground units were already moving. Cities sealed themselves. Streets shifted as barriers rose from beneath the surface. Civilian shelters locked into place. The planet itself seemed to prepare for war. Imperial troops landed expecting chaos. They found resistance. Human soldiers did not charge blindly. They used terrain, traps, and coordination. Urban areas became mazes of controlled fire and sudden silence. Forests swallowed units whole. Deserts turned into killing fields guided by drones and precision strikes. The Empire had trained to fight rebels. They were fighting a military culture. Imperial casualties rose quickly. Reports from the surface were grim. Human forces adapted in real time, learning alien tactics within hours. Weapons were captured, studied, and turned against their creators. In orbit, the siege fleet faltered as news from the ground spread. The Empire was losing everywhere. Humanity sent no victory message. No threats. Only one transmission repeated across all channels, simple and unchanging. Leave our system. Neutral systems intercepted the signal despite Imperial efforts. Councils watched live feeds of Imperial troops retreating from human cities. The narrative was no longer in doubt. The Empire was not unstoppable. The Admiral stared at the data, at the spreading consequences of this war. He saw trade routes shifting, allies hesitating, rivals watching closely. Earth was no longer just a problem. It was a spark. And if the Empire did not end this now, the galaxy would never look at it the same way again. Humanity, watching from 1,000 command rooms, understood something just as important. The Empire had committed fully, which meant it was finally vulnerable. The Galactic Empire finally understood that Earth was not the center of the problem. The problem was humanity. Imperial fleets around the solar system were still powerful, still armed, but they were no longer confident. Ships waited for orders that came late or not at all. Officers argued over priorities. Every system check revealed more uncertainty. The Empire had built its strength on perfect control, and that control was slipping through its fingers. High Command issued a new directive. If Earth could not be crushed quickly, it would be isolated. Imperial jump gates across nearby systems flared to life. Massive interdiction fields activated, designed to trap all traffic in and out of the solar system. The Empire planned to cut Earth off from the galaxy, starve it of information, and erase it quietly over time. Human sensors detected the change within seconds. Earth was being placed inside a cage. In human command centers, the mood shifted. Not to fear but to resolve. Isolation had always been part of the models. Humanity had never assumed it would be allowed to fight on equal terms. They had prepared to fight alone. Imperial engineers worked quickly, locking down space routes. Neutral observers were pushed back by force. Trade vessels were turned away or destroyed as warnings. The Empire wanted no witnesses now. But it was too late for that. The galaxy already knew something was wrong. Inside the solar system, Imperial ships reorganized. A thick defensive line formed between Earth and the outer system. Behind it, the Empire began assembling something new. Something heavy. A siege fleet. These ships were slow, massive, and built for one purpose only: planetary reduction. They were not meant to fight fleets. They were meant to end worlds. As the siege ships powered up, human analysts watched their energy curves rise. The projected damage was clear. If the Empire brought those weapons to full strength, Earth's shields would not hold forever. Human leaders gathered again. There was no argument. The next step was dangerous but necessary. Authorization passed through channels buried deeper than any before. Systems long considered theoretical were approved for live use. Across the solar system, space changed. Human gravity manipulators activated in precise patterns. Not strong enough to tear ships apart, but subtle enough to bend trajectories. Imperial vessels found their orbits drifting, their formations stretching. Small corrections turned into constant adjustments. The Empire felt the pressure immediately. Holding the siege line required perfect balance. Humanity made that balance impossible. Imperial commanders ordered their ships to compensate, burning fuel at an alarming rate just to stay in position. Reserves dropped faster than expected. Maintenance crews worked non-stop as systems strained under conditions they were never designed to face. Human strike groups moved again. This time they did not hide. Compact fleets emerged from shadowed regions of space, transmitting openly. They did not fire immediately. They approached the Imperial line slowly, deliberately, daring a response. Imperial gunners locked on. Human ships did something unexpected. They stopped. The silence stretched. Then human vessels opened their hulls and released hundreds of small objects. Not weapons. Not drones. Simple metal frames that unfolded into massive reflective structures. Solar light hit them. Energy flooded through the arrays, focused and redirected with terrifying efficiency. The reflected beams slammed into Imperial shield systems from dozens of angles at once. The Empire's defenses overloaded. Several siege ships lost shielding entirely. Alarms blared as hulls began to heat and crack. Imperial commanders shouted orders to fire back. Human ships were already moving. They did not chase kills. They struck weak points, vanished, then struck again elsewhere. The siege formation twisted under the pressure, its power uneven, its timing ruined. Inside the Imperial flagship, the Admiral watched the data collapse into chaos. Every attempt to stabilize the situation only revealed more flaws. Human tactics were not built around victory in a single battle. They were built around erosion. Wear the enemy down. Break their rhythm. Make every success cost too much. The Admiral made a choice. He authorized the deployment of Imperial ground forces. Drop ships launched toward Earth, aimed at major population centers and known installations. The Empire would force humanity to fight where it hurt most. On Earth, warning sirens wailed as alien forces burned through the atmosphere. Skies lit with fire. The invasion had reached the ground. Human ground units were already moving. Cities sealed themselves. Streets shifted as barriers rose from beneath the surface. Civilian shelters locked into place. The planet itself seemed to prepare for war. Imperial troops landed expecting chaos. They found resistance. Human soldiers did not charge blindly. They used terrain, traps, and coordination. Urban areas became mazes of controlled fire and sudden silence. Forests swallowed units whole. Deserts turned into killing fields guided by drones and precision strikes. The Empire had trained to fight rebels. They were fighting a military culture. Imperial casualties rose quickly. Reports from the surface were grim. Human forces adapted in real time, learning alien tactics within hours. Weapons were captured, studied, and turned against their creators. In orbit, the siege fleet faltered as news from the ground spread. The Empire was losing everywhere. Humanity sent no victory message. No threats. Only one transmission repeated across all channels, simple and unchanging. Leave our system. Neutral systems intercepted the signal despite Imperial efforts. Councils watched live feeds of Imperial troops retreating from human cities. The narrative was no longer in doubt. The Empire was not unstoppable. The Admiral stared at the data, at the spreading consequences of this war. He saw trade routes shifting, allies hesitating, rivals watching closely. Earth was no longer just a problem. It was a spark. And if the Empire did not end this now, the galaxy would never look at it the same way again. Humanity, watching from 1,000 command rooms, understood something just as important. The Empire had committed fully, which meant it was finally vulnerable. The Galactic Empire had crossed a line it could never uncross. Ground forces were dying on Earth. Siege fleets were bleeding fuel and morale in orbit. Command authority was fragmented, delayed, and doubted. Every Imperial decision now carried the weight of fear, and fear made the Empire dangerous. High Command issued its most severe order. If Earth could not be controlled, it would be erased as an example. Deep within the Imperial flagship, a sealed chamber opened for the first time in centuries. Inside rested a device so restricted that most admirals had never even seen its schematics. It was not a weapon aimed at ships or cities. It was aimed at stars. The plan was simple and horrifying. Destabilize the sun just enough to trigger a controlled stellar cascade. Earth would burn. The solar system would be lost. No evidence of resistance would remain. To the Empire, this was acceptable. Human sensors detected the anomaly within minutes. Subtle fluctuations in solar output. Exotic particles moving through space in patterns that should not exist. Human astrophysicists stared at the data, then went very still. They knew what it meant. In command centers across Earth, silence spread. This was the scenario no one wanted to face. Shields could not stop a dying star. Evacuation on a planetary scale was impossible. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity stood at the edge of extinction. And still no one panicked. Human leaders did not argue. They did not shout. They did not beg. They activated the last protocol. Far beyond the edges of the solar system, something answered. Long ago, humanity had accepted a hard truth. If they ever faced a galactic empire, direct strength would not be enough. Even perfect defense might fail. Survival would require leverage. Humanity had gone looking for it. Decades earlier, unmanned probes had vanished into deep space, carrying only simple instructions and endless patience. They had searched places no empire bothered to watch. Regions unstable, dangerous, and ignored. Now those probes came alive. Across interstellar space, ancient objects shifted. Structures older than the empire itself began to wake, responding to signals keyed to human mathematics and logic. Humanity did not fully understand them. But they understood one thing. The empire feared them. As the Imperial Star Destabilization device powered up, alarms screamed across alien ships. Sensors detected massive energy movements far beyond the solar system, converging slowly, deliberately. "What have they done?" an officer whispered. The admiral knew. His species had legends. Warnings buried in restricted archives. Stories of civilizations that vanished after touching forces they could not control. Humans had found those forces, and learned just enough. Humanity sent one final message before acting. It was not a threat. It was a statement. Stand down. This ends now. The Empire ignored it. The stellar device fired. Space around the sun twisted. Energy surged inward. The star began to scream in frequencies no living thing was meant to hear. On Earth, skies turned red. Gravity shifted. Oceans pulled back from coastlines. Humanity felt the end coming. Then space changed again. Something massive passed between the device and the sun. Not a ship. Not a weapon. A structure made of folded space and impossible angles. It absorbed the energy, bent it, and scattered it harmlessly into nothing. The sun stabilized. Imperial systems went dark across the fleet. Not disabled. Shut down. The ancient structures humanity had awakened did not attack. They enforced. Physics itself became hostile to Imperial technology. Drives failed. Weapons locked. Shields collapsed without damage. Ships drifted helplessly, stripped of power and control. Human systems remained untouched. The Empire had built its technology on assumptions about how the universe behaved. Humanity had learned how to step outside those assumptions. In orbit, Imperial crews stared at dead consoles in horror. There would be no retreat. No counterattack. No escape. On Earth, human command rooms exhaled as one. But the war was not over. Humanity did not destroy the helpless fleet. Instead, human vessels moved in, surrounding Imperial ships calmly, professionally. Boarding teams launched, not to slaughter but to secure. The galaxy was watching. Neutral observers recorded everything. The fall of the Empire's greatest fleet. Not through overwhelming firepower but through control of the battlefield itself. The Admiral sat alone on his bridge, staring at frozen stars outside his viewport. His Empire had gambled everything and lost. A human transmission appeared on his console. This conflict is over. Your forces will stand down. Your leaders will answer for this decision. For the first time in Imperial history, surrender was not forced by destruction. It was forced by certainty. Across the galaxy, reactions exploded. Alliances shifted overnight. Worlds long under Imperial rule saw hope where none had existed before. The myth of eternal domination shattered completely. Humanity had done the impossible. It had stopped an empire without becoming one. On Earth, people emerged from shelters into broken but living cities. They looked up at a sky no longer filled with enemies. Children cried. Adults held each other. The planet had survived. But humanity understood the truth. By saving itself, it had changed the galaxy forever. There was no going back. And whatever came next would be even more dangerous than war. The galaxy did not know how to handle what humanity was doing. Empires were supposed to conquer or collapse. Victors were meant to take territory, demand tribute, and rewrite borders. Humanity did none of that. Earth stayed where it was, surrounded by the wreckage of a defeated invasion, acting less like a ruler and more like a witness. That unsettled everyone. The frozen Imperial fleet still hung in orbit, powerless and intact. Its presence was both a warning and a temptation. Some human commanders quietly argued that destroying it would remove any future risk. Others warned that such an act would echo too closely to the Empire's old habits. Human leadership chose a third path. They announced a tribunal. Not a human court. Not an imperial one. A joint forum, open to neutral civilizations, observers, and even former imperial subjects. The accused were the surviving architects of the invasion and the attempted destruction of Earth's star. The galaxy watched closely. For the first time, imperial leaders were forced to speak publicly about crimes they had hidden for centuries. Evidence was displayed without exaggeration. Data logs. Orders. Simulations showing Earth's extinction had the stellar weapon succeeded. There was no shouting. No spectacle. Only facts. Imperial representatives tried to argue necessity, security, tradition. Each excuse collapsed under the weight of its consequences. Civilizations that had once feared the Empire now saw it clearly. Not eternal. Just cruel. The tribunal did not sentence the Empire to death. It dismantled its authority. Core command structures were dissolved. Occupied worlds were granted autonomy under monitored transitions. Imperial fleets outside the solar system were ordered to stand down, their compliance verified by neutral forces. It was the end of an era. But not everyone accepted it. Far from Earth, an imperial remnant refused surrender. Fanatics loyal to the old order stole a hidden weapon and fled into deep space. Their plan was simple and terrible. If they could not rule the galaxy, they would scar it. Human sensors detected the theft within hours. The remnant was heading toward a densely populated neutral system. Human leadership faced the hardest decision yet. Sending armed fleets could reignite fear. Doing nothing would mean mass death. The ancient structures shifted again, their presence heavy and unmistakable. This was another test. Humanity responded quickly but carefully. They sent a small task group, openly announced, transmitting every move in real time to the galaxy. Their ships carried weapons, but those weapons remained cold. Their true strength lay elsewhere. Human cyber units infiltrated the stolen device, not to shut it down but to lock it into a stable state. The remnant realized too late that their weapon would never fire. Cornered, the fanatics threatened to crash their ships into a nearby colony world instead. Human ships moved between them and the planet without hesitation. A human commander opened a direct channel. "This ends here," he said calmly. "You will not be martyrs. You will not be legends." The remnant fired. Human defenses absorbed the strike and held. Then human ships advanced, disabling engines with precision pulses, boarding without lethal force. The galaxy watched humanity stop a massacre without turning it into a slaughter. The ancient structures remained silent. That silence felt like approval. Back at Earth, the tribunal concluded. The final judgment was delivered without triumph or cruelty. Those responsible would be imprisoned, not executed, under systems designed to prevent power from ever being centralized again. The empire was not replaced. It was dissolved. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to change. Trade resumed under new agreements. Borders softened. Councils formed where empires once ruled alone. Humanity participated, but never dominated. Still, fear lingered. Many civilizations asked the same quiet question. What happens if humans change? Humanity asked itself the same thing. On Earth, education shifted. Military doctrine was rewritten. The story of the war was taught not as a victory, but as a warning. Children learned not only how humanity fought, but why restraint mattered more than strength. The ancient structures remained in distant space, ever present, never intrusive. Human scientists finally decoded a fragment of their signal. It was not a message in words, but a condition. Power invites correction. Restraint invites survival. Humanity understood. The galaxy began to see it too. Earth was not a threat because it could win wars. It was dangerous because it could stop itself from becoming a tyrant. That made humanity something new. Not rulers. Not saviors. Guardians of a line that should never be crossed. As the last Imperial ships were escorted out of the solar system, Earth's skies cleared for the first time since the invasion began. Stars returned to their familiar places. The night felt quiet again. But it was no longer innocent. Humanity stood at the center of a changed galaxy, knowing the final truth. The war was over. The responsibility had just begun. Peace did not arrive with celebration. It arrived with tension. Across the galaxy, the collapse of the Galactic Empire left a vacuum that no one was prepared to fill. Old rivalries resurfaced. Long-suppressed ambitions stirred. Worlds that had only known order through fear now faced the burden of choice, and choice frightened them. Earth felt it immediately. Signals increased. Requests for mediation. Requests for protection. Requests for guidance. Humanity had not asked for leadership, yet the galaxy kept turning toward it. Human leaders understood the danger. This was how empires were born. They refused the crown before it could be offered. Earth announced a doctrine that surprised nearly everyone. Humanity would not enforce peace. It would not command fleets beyond its borders. It would not decide the fate of other civilizations. But it would defend one principle. No extinction weapons. No planetary annihilation. No stars turned into graves. The ancient structures responded. For the first time since the war they moved. Not closer. Not farther. They realigned, forming a distant, silent perimeter around inhabited regions of space. They did not block travel. They did not interfere with daily life. They watched. The message was unmistakable. The line was now universal. Some civilizations resisted. They tested the limits with hidden experiments, secret weapons, forbidden research. Each time the structures reacted the same way. Systems failed. Projects collapsed. No destruction. Just denial. The galaxy learned. On Earth, life slowly returned to something like normal. Cities were rebuilt stronger than before. Monuments rose, not to glorify victory, but to remember the cost of survival. The names of the fallen were spoken more often than the names of generals. Human soldiers returned home quietly. They did not parade. They rested. Years passed. The story of the invasion became history, then legend, then lesson. Children learned that humanity survived not because it was the strongest, but because it refused to break when threatened with annihilation. Still, humanity never relaxed. Deep space sensors remained active. Defense networks stayed online. Preparation did not end with peace. It simply became quieter. Then one day the ancient structure sent a final signal. It was not a warning. It was a confirmation. Human scientists worked for weeks to decode it, comparing patterns, probabilities, outcomes. When the meaning became clear, silence fell across every command room on Earth. Humanity had passed the test. The structures were not judges. They were survivors, remnants of civilizations that had destroyed themselves long ago. They existed to prevent repetition, to intervene when destruction became inevitable. Humanity had chosen restraint when it had every reason to choose domination. That choice mattered. The structures did not leave. They simply reduced their attention, fading into the background of the universe. They would watch again only if needed. The galaxy exhaled. In the decades that followed, something unprecedented happened. Civilizations began cooperating without coercion. Conflicts still occurred, but they ended before becoming annihilation. Technology advanced carefully, ethically, with consequences considered before power was unleashed. Humanity was not worshipped. It was trusted. That trust was fragile and humans treated it as such. Exploration resumed. New worlds were discovered. First contact protocols were rewritten with humility rather than fear. When humanity met younger civilizations, it did not hide its strength, but it did not threaten either. It told the truth. The universe is dangerous. Power has a price. Survival requires discipline. Far from Earth, in a quiet system once scarred by imperial rule, a former subject world rebuilt its cities under open skies. Children there learned a different story than their parents had known. They learned that an empire fell not because it was defeated, but because it crossed a line it should never have touched. And that a single planet, once marked for extinction, had said no. On Earth, an elderly commander stood beneath the night sky, watching familiar stars. He remembered the moment they vanished, the fear that followed, the certainty that came after. Humanity had been tested in the most brutal way possible. It had not responded with surrender. It had not responded with genocide. It had responded with resolve. The galaxy had expected panic. It had received judgment. And judgment, delivered without chains, had changed everything. The stars still held dangers. New threats would come one day. Humanity knew this. It would prepare as it always had. But now the universe knew something too. Earth was not weak. Earth was not reckless. Earth would not kneel. And any force that sought to erase humanity would face not just a planet, but a species that had learned the hardest lesson of all. That survival is not about how much power you hold. It is about knowing exactly where to stop.